This, unfortunately, is a classic case of public corruption that stems from greed and the abuse of power. The Pinellas County Construction Licensing Board exists to protect the public. The PCC-LB is charged with ensuring that people who engage in plumbing, electrical, and other miscellaneous construction work have skills necessary to properly complete the work that they are hired to do by members of the public. Unfortunately, as we know, and we've talked about many times in the past through investigations that we have conducted, there are unscrupulous people who provide construction-related services without licenses and scam people by not doing the work after receiving money and or doing shoddy work that is not to code and then fails inspection. And that's the importance and the purpose of the Pinellas County Construction Licensing Board. Simply put, there are people out there who rip off the public, and as I said, that is the responsibility and the mission of PCCLB to prevent that from happening and provide consequences when people act without licenses or contrary to their licenses. So it is the Pinellas County Construction Licensing Board investigators who respond to complaints, and they issue citations for law violations when people do unlicensed and or shoddy work. Now, importantly, the PCCLB does not inspect for code compliance. Rather, they are focused on the people themselves who perform the work. You know, these investigators are not sworn law enforcement officers, but they do have authority to enforce the law by issuing citations that result in fines, and they work in conjunction with law enforcement where criminal investigations are conducted. And we've talked about those in the past. Now, Andrea Wagner, whose photograph is here to my right, was employed as an investigator excuse me, for the Pinellas County Construction Licensing Board from July of 2018 until May 10th, 2022, just a few days ago, when she resigned while under investigation by her employer, Pinellas County government. Now, as with many cases of this type, the facts are complicated, and I'm going to provide the information to you as succinctly as I can, but suffice it to say that this is a tangled web that we had to untangle through an extensive investigation that involves a lot of documents and what I would consider to be a plethora of text messages. And I'll talk about just a couple that we have excerpts from here that are on my left. So this is what happened. Back in 2020, Wagner initiated a relationship with Chris Thompson and Rachel DeBrakins, D-E-B-R-A-K-I-N-S. They're the owners of Credence Construction, which is a general contracting firm at 2805 Dr. MLK Street North in St. Petersburg. So it's a general contracting firm. Wagner's PCCLB investigative area of responsibility was where Credence Construction operates. Wagner was responsible for investigating complaints PCCLB received about Credence Construction. So she's the investigator responsible for investigating allegations about Credence and others in that area. Now, after meeting Thompson and DeBrakins, and again, Wagner initiated the contact with them. She was in the area, she walked into their office. Wagner improperly referred clients to Credence Construction for their profit and told Thompson and DeBrakins about properties that she, Wagner, owned that she wanted to refurbish and sell for a profit. So here's an investigator for the Pinellas County Construction Licensing Board that walks into Credence Construction, introduces herself, develops a relationship with them, and starts referring clients to them. Now, in return, Thompson, one of the owners of Credence, told Wagner that he needed investors who gave him loans on properties to capitalize property improvements and maximize profits. So she's walking in here telling them that she's an investigator for the Pinellas County Construction Licensing Board. She strikes up this relationship with them. She's referring people to them for business. At the same time, she says that she has these properties that she has an interest in refurbishing. And Credence, Thompson, says that, well, I need people to invest in some of the properties I have and give us capital so that we can engage in the improvements. So Wagner, again, the Construction Licensing Board investigator who's tasked with these investigations and this oversight, agreed to loan Credence Construction in April of 2020 $60,000. So she gave them a $60,000 loan at a 10% interest so that they could make these capital improvements at a residence located at 311 87th Avenue North in St. Petersburg. And there's a promissory note documenting this 10% interest loan for $60,000 that the investigator made to Credence Construction. Now, under no circumstances and in no way should someone who has investigated in enforcement responsibility over a business engage in business referrals to that business, any type of partnership with that business, and certainly should not loan that business $60,000 at 10% interest. Around the same time that Wagner loaned Credence the money, the Pinellas County Construction Licensing Board received a complaint that Rachel DeBrakens, one of the owners of Credence Construction, had been engaged in the unlicensed contracting through a different cabinet business that she had been involved in. So she's now with Credence, she's a business owner of Credence, and previously she had a cabinet company. So while this is happening, the Construction Licensing Board gets a complaint about DeBrakens and her cabinet business. The victim, who made the complaint to the licensing board, complained that DeBrakens had done shoddy work and hadn't completed the project. So Wagner was assigned to investigate that allegation. So what does Wagner do? She goes out, and yes, she cited DeBrakens for unlicensed contracting, but she also wrongly cited the complainant for alleged violations, beginning a pattern of retaliating against people who complained about her newfound business partners, Thompson and DeBrakens. The case against the victim in that case is in the process of being dismissed because what the victim did was not a violation of law. It was not illegal. So she wrongly cited this person in retaliation for this person complaining about her new friends. In May of 2020, Wagner followed up on her previous statement to Thompson that she had her own properties that she wanted to refurbish, and Wagner contracted with Credence to do work at a house that Wagner was refurbishing at 4725 Lake Charles Way in Kansas City. So now Wagner is paying someone that she regulates, investigates, taken action against, to do work on this house that she's refurbishing. So now we're in May of 2020. Another citizen complained about Credence Construction at a job that they were doing, using unlicensed plumbers at this construction project in St. Petersburg. This case, too, was assigned to Wagner by her supervisors at the Pinellas County Construction Licensing Board. Credence was, in fact, using unlicensed plumbers. Wagner determined that, but Wagner did not cite the unlicensed plumber or Credence. At that time, Wagner had the outstanding loan to Credence for $60,000 at 10% interest, and Credence was working on one of Wagner's properties on Lake Charles. So instead of citing Credence like she should have, Wagner did what she had previously done when a citizen complained about Credence. She retaliated against this citizen, too, and falsely cited the citizen for erroneous violations. These wrongly issued citations were dismissed. Then in August of 2020, Wagner transacted the subordination sale of a home she owned at 940 26th Street North in St. Pete to Credence Construction for $115,000. That's the home there in the board to my left or to your right. She had originally purchased it for about $87,500, and now she was going to sell it to Credence for $115,000. But the paperwork for the sale was only partially complete. And importantly, the deed hadn't been executed. The deed had not changed hands. And the plan was not to do all of this until the work had been done, more work had been done on the property. So Credence was going to refurbish that property and then sell it upon being paid the $115,000. So this is in August of 2020. Now in October of 2020, a couple months later, Wagner again loaned money to Credence, and this time she loaned them $30,000 at 12% interest, but the property address wasn't listed and there was no time frame for repayment of the loan. This is, of course, noteworthy because it's a $30,000 loan while Credence was working on that property that Wagner owned and had agreed to sell them. In December of 2020, so a couple months after this, Wagner told Thompson that she wasn't happy with the work that Credence was doing and she wanted her whole $90,000 back. During all of 2021, Wagner and Credence disagreed over the work being done by Credence, and Credence did not repay the $90,000. So we go from 20 all the way through 21. They're haggling back and forth, dissatisfied with what's going on, but there's no money changing hands. And Credence continued working on the property even though they were haggling back and forth. So this 26th Street North property. So now fast forward to December of 2021, so about a year later. Wagner and Credence, they entered into a settlement agreement. They called for Credence to pay Wagner the $90,000 plus the $115,000 for the sale of that house and $9,000 in interest for a total of $214,000. Credence continued working on the 26th Street house, and in April of 2022, Wagner saw that Credence had listed this house for $749,000. And remember that Wagner had agreed to sell Credence the house for $115,000, giving Credence a potential profit of $634,000. So Wagner lost her mind. She became irate because of the advertised sale price being $749,000. And she had leverage because she still held the deed to the house that had never been executed. So she called Thompson, contacted him, and told him that unless he paid her an additional $136,000, or a total of $350,000, that she would not sign the deed. So he could have this house all day long and advertise it for $749,000 and sell it for $749,000, but he couldn't sell it because she wouldn't sign the deed unless he coughed up more money. Now at this point, Wagner corruptly incentivized Thompson by telling him through text messages that if he paid her the $350,000, that she would turn a blind eye to construction licensing complaints about Credence in her area. Thompson believed, based on Wagner's previous retaliatory acts of citing people who complained on him and on DeBrakens, that if he didn't pay the $350,000, that she would go after him for construction licensing violations. So the situation became one of pay the $350,000 and have Credence licensing violations ignored, or don't pay the $350,000 and be retaliated against by Wagner through her using her position and authority as a PCCLB investigator. So there really are a plethora of text messages. I've just given you a couple excerpts here so you can see. And this one that I'm referring to here at the bottom of the board to my left, to your right, I'll make a deal to turn a blind eye to your properties. You can see from these others, and they're all of this tone in nature where there was this quid pro quo, is that, and she even acknowledges here that when she was citing these people for the erroneous violations, how she could get in trouble for it, and everything that she was doing was back and forth in these text messages, and there's just pages and pages of text messages. So after DeBrakens, in essence, gave him the ultimatum, paid the $350,000, and then I will also sweeten the deal by not investigating any complaints against your unlicensed contracting, because Credence wasn't doing unlicensed contracting. They had unlicensed plumbers. They were doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. She should have been citing them for it. And so she says, give me the $350,000. I'll also sweeten the deal by not investigating and citing you for violations. And if you don't pay the $350,000, not only do you get the sweet part of the deal, but because of what she had done in the past, Thompson believed that she would then retaliate against them and go after them with excessive and or perhaps even made up violations. So Thompson decided that enough was enough. He contacted his lawyer. His lawyer contacted Pinellas County government. And once the county who she worked for became aware of this, they immediately contacted us. We began a criminal investigation, and that resulted today in her arrest. Wagner's misconduct really covers the entire spectrum of public corruption. She failed to perform her responsibilities and used her position for personal financial gain. She retaliated against others for personal benefit, and she was willing to ignore law violations that paid $350,000. We just ask that if anyone out there has any information regarding Wagner or any other conduct of this nature, to contact our Economic Crimes Unit, and the case agent for this investigation is Detective Jason Everts, and he can be reached at 727-582-6243. So I realize that's a lot, it's complicated, I tried to distill it down for you, but it really is, unfortunately, a classic case of public corruption and somebody abusing their power. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Sheriff, when did the investigation initially begin into Wagner, when you guys were notified?
About 5-6 weeks ago.
Okay, and then when, what date was it, okay, we're going to go arrest her, we have enough information?
Yesterday. And then she was arrested first thing this morning.
Did she say anything? Did she have any remorse? Did she admit to the wrongdoing?
They're in the process of interviewing her now, so I really can't comment on that. I know that they are interviewing and have been talking to her for a while, and so what I've been told so far is that she is making some acknowledgments, so I would characterize them as that, not necessarily admissions, but the interview is ongoing right now. Since she quit, and what happened was, again, Pinellas County government acted swiftly with this, began an investigation. They're getting ready to have a disciplinary hearing, and I'm not sure whether it was a termination hearing or just a disciplinary hearing. She got wind of that and it was being conducted by the county. And so when she found out that it was coming to hearing, she abruptly quit. And she is also apparently a personal trainer in a gym, and now she has also another job with some construction company. It looks like, from looking at social media accounts with her, she used to work for the city of St. Pete. So she's been around in this construction industry for a long time.
When it comes to that construction company, how many red flags did they have, do they have, and how long have they kind of been under the watch?
Yeah, and that's something I'd have to refer you to the Pinellas County Construction Licensing Board with that type of a question. I really don't know the answer to that because that's not our area of responsibility. We're not tasked with these investigations. We don't employ Wagner. It's their area of responsibility. How many complaints they've had about Credence or other things going on. But we do know that Credence was using an unlicensed plumber. She should have acted on it. And there are other things going on, obviously, with DeBrakens in the past. So, but I really can't answer those questions because I'm not privy to that information.
Is the Sheriff's Office conducting any criminal investigations of the owners of Credence?
There's no indication right now that they themselves engaged in any crime, but I would say that the investigation's ongoing. And right now, the focus of it on the bribery charges and the official misconduct charges, which are both felonies, and that's what she's been charged with. She's the focus of the investigation at this point, but everything's on the table and it's an open investigation.
Is it believed that there are more victims out there, that she was possibly bribing more people? Because it sounds like, might not be one-off.
No, and I'm very concerned about that. It does sound like it may not be a one-off. It sounds like that there, generally I can tell you, just from experience is that, especially with somebody who's just blatant and is doing it to the extent that she is doing it and over the period of time, is that this does not look like it's the first time. That's why I put out the information and asked anybody that's got any information that's willing to come forward to contact Detective Everts in our economic crime section, because I am concerned about this. This does not sound to me like this is the first time that she ever did this. And you can tell that, and one of the reasons I say that is looking at the text messages, the tone of the messages, and just how cavalier she is about it. I think she got very relaxed in what she was doing. So it is a concern, although I don't know, but I suspect that there's probably other times that this has happened.
The construction company was the whistleblower, but clearly they're not in the right. So are they allowed to continue to do business? And if so, how many violations can you have before you're just, okay, you're
Right.
not just business? So how long is that?
Right. So I would refer you to the Pinellas County Construction Licensing Board on that. No, they're not part of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. They're part of Pinellas County government. You'd have to ask them about that. I don't know what complaints they have about Credence, what Credence's history is. I just can't answer those questions. Those are not criminal violations. Those are civil violations, administrative violations. And what their history is, what kind of company they are, what investigation may be going on regarding them. Those are all things that you're going to have to ask Pinellas County Construction Licensing Board or Pinellas County government about. All right, thanks everybody.